So I just had finally the time to listen to the newest Megadeth record. I did this with my Patreon community as a listening party, and I have to say, after a couple of songs, it felt more and more like work and not like fun. And to be honest, I'm quite disappointed from that record. And why? And I really hate myself to say that. Teemu's playing is one of the reasons why I is so disappointed. You will find out in today's video. Here we go. Hey Guitar Champion, what's going on? I'm Justin Hornbach back from my practice dojo and welcome to today's video. When you are not new to this channel, you know that I've played in the last 5 years in Megalife, the biggest German Megadeth tribute band, and I devoted a lot of my time playing Megadeth because I'm a huge Megadeth fan. Peace Sells, Rust in Peace, Countdown to Extinction, Euthanasia, such legendary records with such legendary guitar playing in it and so many cool songs and riffs. And as well, like the last two records, I really love Dystopia. I love The Sick and the Dying and the Dead. It's such a great record. And now they finally released their last record. This is the end of Megadeth with a new CD called Megadeth. And oh boy, is this record disappointing. Oh my god, on so many levels. And I'm so sorry, but I have to talk about this. And I have to talk about as well Teemu's playing on that record. But about that a little bit later. First, let us go a little bit through the songs and through in general why this record is so disappointing. And basically you could easily say it is the songs. Because the songs, they are so dull. They started really strong. Tipping Point is a really good opener. And with some really great solos on there. And you know, some really cool riffs and some really cool drum works. And they get worse and worse and worse when we're going down the road of that record. Of course, I compare that a little bit to the latest record. And for example, The Sick, the Dying, the Dead, they had so many cool moments and new and refreshing moments, riffs. I mean, I know, yeah, Ice-T rapping in a Megadeth song is a little bit weird, but the song itself, super cool. We'll Be Back, one of the fastest Megadeth riffs. And that record, they were really showing what they're capable of on the instruments, on the drums, on the guitar. Such an awesome record. Let me pinpoint out some good moments of that record. I really liked Tipping Point. I have to say, I really like I Don't Care. I know a lot of people were like, oh, ooh, grow up, Dave Mustaine, you sound like a 16-year-old, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know, I like that vibe, I like that sound, the groove, and the solos as well. Let There Be Shred has one of the best solos of that whole record on there. There are a little bit too much solos on that song, to be honest. So that one solo is not really sticking out, but when you focus on that one solo from Teemu there, really great song. Puppet Parade started great as a really cool throwback to cryptic writings and songs like I Got Even with some Countdown to Extinction vibes there. Obey the Call as a really cool breakdown where they're starting to go from a slow to mid-tempo song to a really high-paced, fast song with some really cool shredding on there. I Am War, really cool riff in the verse that could have been done from John Petrucci and a really interesting chord progression, shifting the accent and syncopating it and doing some cool stuff with that. But basically that's all. That's it. That are like couple of moments that are really, really cool, but a lot of moments where I think like, what? Why? The lyrics, like for example, Hey God, I Am War, or the chorus of Another Bad Day. I don't know what Dave is trying to tell us here, or is trying to say, but it feels like he wanted to say all the time, look how bad you are all to me, and I'm the victim, and now I really have to prove myself, but I'm the victim. You know, in the record before that, you had fun songs. You had serious songs like Dogs of Chernobyl, but also fun songs like Mission to Mars, which was a fun song. The riffs and the chord progression is another thing. I mean, I know they don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like, for example, in Another Bad Day, we have the same chord progression like in This Was My Life from the Countdown to Extinction record, or like the solo from How the Story Ends from the 13 record. So there are some chord progressions that are really typical Dave Mustaine-esque, like the Hangar 18 even chord progression with the moving fifths, the minor chord, and then moving up the fifth and going down again, that James Bond kind of motif. Or even like this chord progression where you have the tonic, then you're going to the second chord as the dominant 7 chord, and then you're going to the flat second chord as the major 7 chord, etc., etc. That is typical Megadeth, Dave Mustaine kind of riffing and chording. What he's doing out of these chords always were kind of interesting, and it was always a really cool like nod or throwback to these kind of eras. And the arrangements are really cool, but here now it is all really dull, really like, I don't really care. Yeah, I don't care. He's not really caring about the music. I have that feeling on that record. And the next thing is, I mean, it would be fine when this would be just a Megadeth record. Then, hey, everything cool. You cannot have like 10 out of 10 records all the time. It would be like maybe a 6 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10 record. And that's super fine. Again, bands have that. Nothing against this. But as your last record, as the last thing that you want to put out, I hoped he would put some more thought and work into that, because it really feels half-assed, to be honest, and that's really sad. I saw a really cool Reddit post where before the titles were released, somebody were like, imagine how cool it would be to have a song named Megadeth. The final song is called Megadeth. Finally, we have a Megadeth song, having more kind of nostalgic wings and nods to the work of Megadeth. I mean, they once did this, for example, with the song Victory. The lyrics of that song consist fully out of song names. Really cool idea. Really cool to listen to that the first time on Euthanasia. That was pretty cool. Why not doing more like this? Or Mission to Mars on the last record, where he was quoting some of his older songs. Really cool. But no, mostly we have songs that are like a 4 out of a 10 or a 5 out of 10. Not really good songs. Okay-ish songs, you know? But I think like one of the worst disappointments is Ride the Lightning. To quote my good friend Bradley Hall,
absolutely horrific, and I never want to hear this ever again.
Because yeah, it is basically a note-for-note cover of Ride the Lightning. And I thought, when you are doing your last record with the legacy of Megadeth, why not finally closing that chapter and that fight with Metallica and do a song together with James Hetfield? That would be so epic. That would be like, yes, finally that feud is over and they are now friends or not, but hey, the chapter is closed, and it feels so much like unfinished business and like, hey, I wrote that solo, Kirk Hammett didn't wrote that solo, I'm more important than... it's so sad, so sad. I mean, I want to love that record. I want to love Megadeth, but it is so disappointing. But I also hate myself. I really hate myself to say that I'm not the biggest fan of Teemu's playing there. And I know that a lot of Teemu, I have a lot of Teemu fans in my followership, and I know they will hate me now for saying this, but it's my opinion. I have a right for my opinion. But first of all, Teemu is a superior player than I am. He is technically a mastermind. I've covered a solo that Teemu once written for a band which is called Heavisaurus, which is like a band for kids from Finland, and they are also like here in Germany, and they have that song which basically you can translate to Heroes of the World, Saviors of the World, Retter der Welt in German, and Monte Nappe Sari something on Finnish. That is an awesome solo that Teemu wrote there. I've covered that. I know how hard it is to play a Teemu stuff. And playing that stuff, don't get me wrong, it's also really, really hard. I've covered Tipping Point. It's not easy to cover these kind of things, but I am more disappointed on a meta level. The playing of Teemu is, again, superior. The technique, it is perfect. But I am really not the biggest fan of how he constructed these solos. One thing that I love with Kiko's playing is he was always super fresh in his playing. But on Kiko's solos, the licks, the end justifies the means. The licks are there, they have a purpose. They are connecting great melodies, they're connecting great ideas, and they're creating a tension. And that tension is perfectly resolved. That's why I love Kiko's solo playing. And Teemu has a similar problem, in my opinion, and I know I will get a lot of hate for that opinion, but to quote Dave Mustaine, I don't care. No, he has a similar problem like Chris Broderick in his solos from his Megadeth era. Chris did it much, much better in Act of Defiance, to be honest, but in Megadeth, he had a problem of building up tension with a really cool run, with a really cool sequence, and not really resolving that tension smoothly. Like, for example, 𝗏𝗚 is playing a really long run, and he's resolving into the 9th of a chord, an option note, and not necessarily into the 1, the 3rd, or the 5th. Now, I truly believe that 𝗏𝗚 was aware of that, and that it was a decision, made by art. But for me personally, and that's again my personal opinion, I think it's much, much more valuable for a solo when you have tension in the long run and then you are releasing that tension. Here we have tension in the long run, we're not releasing it, we're going to it later, we continue with that tension, but by continuing with that tension we have always the dynamic up here and it cannot resolve anywhere, or it feels like, meh. I hope you get what I mean. It's not so easy to describe because it has to do with these kind of parameters like tension, release, dynamic, all these kind of things. And there, 𝗏𝗚 is not convincing me, to be honest. No, unfortunately. The second thing, I have to say, 𝗏𝗚 is like the modern Marty Friedman, for sure, 100%. His phrasing, his melodic choices is so much Marty Friedman-esque like no other guitar player on Megadeth before. It makes sense because I truly believe that Marty Friedman is like probably one of the biggest inspirations for 𝗏𝗚 anyways, and like one of the biggest heroes. So in a certain way, of course, you sound like your big heroes, but at a certain point, it's a little bit too much. You remember the first note of the Tornado of Soul solo, the wow, going up the bend, going down, and then slightly going up again that bend. 𝗏𝗚 is doing that so often. It gets a little bit boring, it gets a little bit mundane, and especially he's doing that, for example, in the solo of the last note as well, and I think there it does not fit there on this kind of dramatic and emotional kind of song. A more smoother vibrato would fit a little bit more and would leave more space for the rest of it, and it takes over too much, this kind of vibrato and this kind of bending. And again, I truly believe that 𝗏𝗚, and I highly respect him for that all of these choices were decided with awareness. So he knew what he was doing. So objectively, I cannot talk anything against 𝗏𝗚. Subjectively, there are a lot of things where, I don't know, I was so excited about that record and 𝗏𝗚's playing because I love 𝗏𝗚 and I really love his picking, and I watched the Winter Madness solos so many times. But I now again more and more realize that 𝗏𝗚, hello Yngwie, 𝗏𝗚 didn't wrote the Winter Madness solo. It was somebody else. 𝗏𝗚 is really good executing the solos, but I have the feeling now with the Megadeth stuff, the writing the solos, there's something for me personally that I miss. I'm so sorry, Yngwie. I'm not worth the shred. Because I don't know, but again, I don't really like the solos of 𝗏𝗚 on that record. So much about my little opinion about the new Megadeth record. Oh, now I'm full with cat hair. Great. What do you think about the new Megadeth record? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your opinion. You now have all the rights to talk shit about me and extremely negative about me because I dare to criticize somebody like 𝗏𝗚. Anyways, I wish you a really great day. I wish you a lot of fun learning, practicing, and mastering the guitar. I hope I'm going to see you in my next video. Cheers and power your progress. Bye.